I'm starting this hike off with a bit of a soft landing. Just doing some road walking tonight. This is my second attempt at hiking a ridge route that I made up. It's already like a month and a half later than my first attempt, which was early June, and definitely too early to be trying something like that. There was still way too much snow up in the mountains. I think my lack of experience hiking in the mountains showed a little bit with that decision. I figured since that mountain range was relatively low, mostly around 8,000 feet, that the snow would be melting there earlier than the rest of the mountain ranges, which go up to like 10,000 feet around here. But that wasn't the case, and I definitely paid the price for that decision. I learned my lesson from that, and now I'm out here in the Snowcrest Range, which looks to be like a much more mellow mountain range than the Cabinets do. I would say the Cabinet Range was kind of at a moderate to advanced level, and the Snowcrest Range looks more like a beginner level ridge route, so this is where I should have started. I've been climbing all morning, starting to get up on top of these hills, and the views are starting to open up. There's some big old grassy hills. That's what I'm going up next. And eventually those will turn into some more jagged, rocky ridgeline. That's when it's going to get real exciting. Here's my first look at a rocky ridgeline that I'll be going up. Looks like a piece of cake. Since these routes are untested and I don't know if they're actually possible to hike or not, anytime I get a view of the route up ahead, I have to kind of study it and try and pick out any spots that might be tricky to navigate. At a second glance, I've discovered an obstacle on the upcoming ridge. Right in the center of the frame there's a cliff, and it looks like I'll have to down climb just a little bit, and hopefully I'll be able to get around it. Almost done with my first ridge. Right now I'm just coming down from it. I have to go all the way down there. So it's about 1,000-foot descent, and then right back up to the next ridge. Just traveling through the wilderness in general is punctuated by much different types of hiking. When I'm up on the ridgeline, it's really enjoyable. Take my time to look around and really take in the view. Going down scree fields like this is quite different. These periods are much more intense. Here, placing your foot on the wrong rock could cause a whole cascade of things that you don't want to happen. So I'm moving a lot slower and I'm placing a lot more energy into where I put each foot. Well, that was a very long and tedious descent. Now I gotta cross this creek and go right back up the mountain. This time it'll be about a 3,000 foot climb, but at least that'll be on grassy slopes pretty much the whole way. So I just came down that mountain. Now I'm about a third of the way up the next mountain. The climb is a totally different mental space than descending on scree slopes. When I'm climbing, it doesn't really matter where I place my feet, but obviously it's a huge cardio workout. I'm focused on my breath, and I tend to withdraw inside my head. For me, that's usually a good time to think about stuff. And as long as I keep my breathing steady and rhythmic, the suffering of climbing uphill is never too overwhelming. I just have to keep my pace. Looks like we have some weather moving in. The ridge that I'm going up to now has absolutely no cover. It is extremely exposed up there. Not a good place to get stuck if a thunderstorm is passing through. So that's where I'm going. And that's what's coming my way. I haven't heard any thunder or seen any lightning yet, but so far I haven't really seen any red flags like that. So I think I'm going to keep going. Well, I think this is going to be camp for tonight. This is one of like 2 flat spots that I've seen on the ridge the entire time I've been up here. It's about 7 o'clock already, and I think it's going to take me about 4 hours to get up and over Sunset Peak and Olson Peak. And there's not going to be any places to camp in between here and the end of those peaks. So I don't really have a choice at this point. I think I have to camp here and do those parts in the morning. It actually looks like those rain clouds are going to pass over me to the south, so that wasn't really an issue anymore. But who knows, maybe it'll still rain on me tonight. And at least this way I'll have my tent set up before that happens. Adding in the meat, red pepper flakes, and of course the Fritos. That's good like it always is. This is pretty much what I eat every night that I backpack. Rice, ramen, some form of meat, red pepper flakes, and Fritos to top it off. This is all about taking in the scenery and being really careful with my navigation, making sure I'm choosing routes that make the most sense. And I think that's what makes these ridge routes so cool, is that I am kind of picking my own route the entire time. When I'm hiking trails, of course it's a lot easier and that part is a lot more enjoyable, but I do feel a little bit like I'm stuck to this one path and I don't have the option to go somewhere else if it looks cool. But with these ridge routes, the whole point is to go to the coolest places. Spending time out in the wilderness in general is very freeing, but now that I'm not even stuck to a single trail, I'm free to basically go wherever I want. I think that having this much freedom comes with its responsibilities, though, too. Since I'm not on an established trail, and since I'm just cross-country hiking across these pretty dangerous ridgelines at points, it's up to me to keep myself safe. Gives me more of a sense of ownership over the hike that I'm doing. And I feel much more engaged in the whole decision-making process of it all. I'm starting the morning off with a big climb up to Sunset Peak. There is one obstacle coming up that I spotted all the way back from the Sawtooth Ridge. Looks like about a 40-foot tall cliff I'm going to have to somehow bypass. Other than that, looks like a piece of cake. Just kidding, it never is. There it is. It's actually a lot less intimidating now that I'm up close. I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. I'm going to try and go up here and then go around and see if there's a way up. Huh. That's a pretty serious cliff too. But I think I can do it. This is reminding me of chimney climbs on the Hayduke Trail. That turned out to be not much of an obstacle at all. It wasn't really scary and it was actually pretty fun. Now it looks fairly straightforward all the way up to Sunset Peak. These are the most extreme areas in the mountain ranges. And because they're the most extreme areas, they offer the most adventure and the biggest views. So it's that balance between risk and reward. Now the risk is very high, but the payoff is also very high. The reward is about as good as it can get in the mountains. Now from up here I can see the route pretty much for a day and a half behind and in front of me. Back there you can see Sawtooth Mountain. That's the first peak that I climbed. And up ahead of me, got Olson Peak, Spur Mountain, Slide Rock Mountain. I'm hoping I can get all those done today. That's a long way to go. Alright, I'm on the summit of Olson Peak now, and this kind of signals the end of my second ridgeline. Snowcrest Range kind of has these really distinct ridgelines that rise up out of the ground and then fall back into the ground. That's why I have really big climbs and descents at the ends of each of these ridges. So now I'm going back down. I think I underestimated a little bit how much work and how slow it would be to walk on jagged rock all day. It's definitely taking a toll on my feet and legs, and I'm starting to get kind of tired. So I'm going to do what I can to avoid walking on scree when possible. Instead of following the ridge all the way down from here, I'm going to take a little bit of a shortcut and just go straight down. Then I'll be able to walk on a grassy hill for most of it, instead of following another scree field for the entire way down. Then I'll meet up with the trail, take that for like half a mile, leave the trail again, and then go up the grassy hill up Hogback Mountain and just do the last half of that on scree. It's not uncommon for me to be up on one of these knife edge ridges, looking ahead and just thinking that that looks kind of impossible and extremely dangerous. And that's usually when the thought pops into my head about, what am I doing out here? Like, what's the point of all this? The rewards that come from doing things like this are kind of intangible. It's not going to result in making a whole bunch of money. My life isn't going to improve drastically after doing a hike like this. But the benefits are real, and they do add up over time. I think the more that I do things like this, and the more that I challenge myself out here, the easier regular life becomes. And if I encounter some sort of challenge or stress or some sort of discomfort in regular life, none of it seems that bad once I compare it to what I've experienced out here. So I think what I'm doing by putting myself in these situations is that I'm slowly expanding my comfort zone. With a small comfort zone, I'm not very adaptable. I need everything to be exactly the way I want it to be, or else I'm going to be uncomfortable. And that just makes life more difficult, because we don't have control over everything. And inevitably, we're going to experience things that are uncomfortable. But by expanding my comfort zone, that means that that's going to happen less often. It opens up a lot more doors to me, and it gives me a lot more options. So in the long run, I end up having more freedom in life. And I think having freedom to do what we want to do is probably the most valuable thing that we can have. This is the first time I've had access to water since about this time yesterday. Obviously there's no water sources up on the ridge. Just one of the many extra little factors that makes this hike more difficult. I think all those things are starting to add up, just kind of take a toll on my energy. Looking at Hogback Mountain, that's the next ridge that I have to climb, and I'm not looking forward to that climb. That's another big one. I think the level of exposure up on the ridge top is kind of draining too. It's not something that I really realize while it's happening, but when I came down from the last ridge, I had to walk through the forest a little bit. And that actually felt really comforting. Just to be in the forest and to be in a little bit of shelter. That felt pretty good. Hogback Mountain. This one has a cairn. The last two were bare up on top. From here it's pretty much all downhill. Got a 3,000 foot descent. All on a rocky ridgeline. So that's going to take a while. The clouds continue to build, and so there's a pretty heavy rain cloud over there. I'll be keeping an eye on that as I keep going. These hikes are really good practice for decision making in general. I think it actually simulates regular life pretty well. Because usually the options that I have out here are not ideal. I just have to choose the best one that's available to me. It's very rare that we get the exact choices that we're hoping for. All we can do is make the best of it. Also out here, I rarely have all the information that I need to make a proper decision. Usually all I can do is take the information that I have available to me and kind of weigh the pros and cons between different choices and whatever I know about them. And then at a certain point I just have to make a choice and go for it. I don't have the option of just being stuck in a state of indecision out here. I can't just hang out on the ridge forever. So that element of time, it forces me to make a choice, and to make a choice relatively quickly. I think it's very easy to take little tidbits of information that agree with our feelings and then just make a kind of impulsive decision based on that. I see a lot of decision making like that in regular life. But out here the consequences are too high, and I'm forced to take in all the information, whether I like it or not, and kind of ignore my emotions, look at things rationally and objectively, make decisions based on that instead of what I would rather feel like doing.
Oh my God.
Well, that was definitely the scariest ridge so far. Maybe the scariest ridge of my whole life. Those sheets of rock just come up to a point like this, and there's like nothing to walk on. They are so sharp you could actually cut stuff on it. But that whole thing was pretty scary. Glad that's over. Coming up next, I'm coming down off of this hogback ridge. Looks pretty steep, but at least I'll be off the scree relatively soon. And then most of the down climb will be on grass. So it turns out that that's not rain behind me. There's a wildfire burning back there. I can't tell you how good it feels to be walking on a trail. Basically the first time on this whole hike that I've been on a trail. I'll be taking this Snowcrest trail up until it intersects with the ridge that I'm going to climb. And that'll take me up to Spur Mountain and then Slide Rock Mountain. Unfortunately, a lot of these trails are old cow trails, and they're not marked very well. And I just went the wrong way for about half a mile uphill. So now I get to go back downhill, try and find the trail that I missed. Well, the rain is back. Just some light sprinkles now, but it's happening at exactly the same time that I'm leaving the trees. I'm going across that trail way out in the open there. looks like it might be kind of scattered like this all day. Well, the trail was nice while it lasted. Back up onto the ridge. So from here, up on Spur Mountain, I can see the entire rest of the Snowcrest Range. The big one over there is Slide Rock Peak. That looks like that's going to be pretty much the last real challenge of the hike. And after I come down from there, it's mostly grassy slopes all the way. I'll even be on the Snowcrest Trail for a good portion of that because it's up on the ridge. We'll call this the peak. And that's Snowcrest Peak. It's all downhill from here. I'll find a cool place to camp up high, and it'll be an easy walk out in the morning. Last night didn't exactly go to plan. The place that I set my tent up in, it was nice and calm when I set it up, but as I was setting it up I was noticing that the trees there were all flagged, which means that there is some very strong wind and it happens very often in that spot. But the tent was already set up, so I thought I'd take my chances, and basically as soon as I went to bed the wind just started howling. Felt like my tent was gonna rip out of its stakes, or just the whole tent was gonna rip apart. So I had to get up, put my headlamp on, unstake the whole thing and drag it over to some safe spot. I ended up finding the one little flat spot that was sheltered up here, and that worked out alright. Now I got a beautiful sunrise for the last few miles down this ridge. Good way to end the trip. Well, that's it. I'm at the road. Not the most exciting finish line, but these adventures usually don't have that kind of finish line. All the exciting adventurous part was back there. I've just got a little bit farther to go to my car. It's parked down a little forest road. And that's it. This is only about a 30-mile hike, but it was hard. Definitely learned a lot and raised my confidence a little bit to actually complete this route after that major failure in the Cabinet Mountains. So I'll take what I learned and apply it to the next trip. Pretty awesome hike though. Completely exhausting, but awesome.